My name is Bethany Morrison, and 6 months ago, my life changed in ways I could never have imagined. For years, I had worked double shifts as a cardiac nurse at Mercy General Hospital, while raising my 2 children, Rosalie and Colton, in a modest apartment. Our home wasn't much to look at from the outside with rattling windows and radiators that clanged in winter. But inside, it was alive with Lego cities sprawling across Colton's floor, and science experiments cluttering every surface thanks to Rosalie's endless curiosity. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was full of love. My marriage to Garrett had ended 3 months earlier after years of walking on eggshells, never knowing when a comment or a late dinner might set off his temper. He had left for a younger woman, Sienna, declaring that he needed a fresh start. I should have felt only grief, but mostly I felt relief. The divorce was finalized on March 15th, and I circled the date not as celebration, but as proof I had survived. What I didn't know was that Garrett had been holding a secret card. 2 months after the divorce, his parents, Walter and Vera Morrison, died in a car accident. Their will contained a clause Garrett had clearly known about all along. Their substantial estate, 3 rental properties, and a portfolio worth over $2 million would only pass to Garrett if he had primary custody of his children. If not, the money would go to charity. Suddenly, the man who had forgotten birthdays and missed soccer games reinvented himself as the devoted father. He began showering the children with gifts, enrolling them in expensive camps, and documenting every moment in our apartment like an investigator. I should have seen the trap forming, but I was too exhausted from juggling shifts and scraping money together for a lawyer. Garrett hired a ruthless attorney named Thornley, who built a case against me with fabricated evidence. Photos of an empty refrigerator he had staged after dumping food bank statements he had tampered with, and neighbors, his golf buddies, who swore they had seen my children searching for food. Thornley painted me as an irresponsible mother, barely keeping my children clothed or fed. My own lawyer, an overworked public defender named Miss Delane, struggled to keep up. Every time I tried to defend myself, my words were twisted until I looked defensive, weak, or careless. By the morning of the custody hearing, I felt like a lamb being led into the wolf's den. Garrett sat smug in his expensive suit, Sienna glowing with pregnancy behind him, and Thornley prowling the courtroom with the ease of a predator. He questioned me about my 62-hour work week, implying I abandoned my children with elderly babysitters. He displayed photos of my daughter's beloved worn-out shoes and my son's favorite patched jacket as evidence of neglect. He even accused me of hiding a medical condition because I took insulin for diabetes. Every defense I gave was dismissed as an excuse. The judge's frown deepened as Thornley laid out accusation after accusation, each one designed to break me down. Garrett smirked across the courtroom, the same expression he used to wear when twisting my words during our marriage. For a moment, I felt myself collapsing inside, convinced I was about to lose everything. Then, a small, clear voice cut through the tension. "Your Honor, may I say something?" Every head turned. It was my 9-year-old daughter, Rosalie, standing in her purple dress, the one she wore when she needed courage. Beside her sat Colton, his dinosaur tie knotted crookedly, trying to look serious. The bailiff gently told her to sit, but she stayed on her feet, clutching a glitter-decorated shoebox to her chest. "My name is Rosalie Morrison," she said, steady and brave. "That's my mom over there, and I have something really important you need to see." The judge raised his hand, stopping the bailiff from moving her. "What's in the box, Rosalie?" She took a deep breath. "Receipts, Your Honor. The ones Daddy told me to hide from Mommy's lawyer. He said if I kept them secret and told everyone Mommy doesn't feed us, he'd buy me a new iPad and take us to Disney World." The courtroom froze. Garrett's smugness drained into panic. He jumped up protesting that she was making things up, but the judge silenced him sharply. Rosalie walked forward, placing the shoebox on the bench. From inside, she pulled receipts, photos, and a small notebook. Then, with a trembling but determined voice, she told the truth about how Garrett had sabotaged us how he threw away food and staged evidence, and how he had threatened her and her brother with foster care if they spoke up. My daughter, who still needed a nightlight at home, was standing in a courtroom full of adults dismantling Garrett's lies with evidence she had secretly gathered. My son Colton stood too, declaring, "We were being detectives for truth." It was the moment the tide turned. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Rosalie placed photographs on the judge's bench. They were slightly blurry but clear enough, Garrett hauling bags from our apartment to the dumpster, unopened packages of food spilling out. She explained that he came when I was at work, emptied our pantry, and then photographed the empty shelves. The judge leaned forward, his expression shifting from skepticism to something harder, more controlled. "Why didn't you tell anyone earlier, Rosalie?" he asked gently. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "Because Daddy said, if I told you, would be angry and send me and Colton to different foster homes. He said we'd never see Mommy again. But yesterday, my teacher taught us about truth and justice. She said sometimes being scared is okay, but letting lies hurt people you love is never okay." Colton stood beside her, holding his own small notebook. "I helped too," he added bravely. "We wrote everything down. Daddy told me to say I was hungry at school, but Mommy always makes us breakfast. Even when she works all night, she makes French toast sticks we can heat up ourselves." The defense tried to interrupt Thornley, arguing that the children were too young to understand what they were saying. But the judge silenced him. "I've been on this bench for 23 years. I know the difference between rehearsed lies and children carrying the weight of truth." Rosalie pulled out more items. "Here are the receipts for the new shoes Mommy bought me 3 pairs, but I only like my lucky ones. Here's the receipt for Colton's inhaler. Mommy bought it instead of her own medicine because insurance only covered one." She held up her unicorn-covered notebook. "This is where I wrote everything Daddy told us to lie about. January 18th, he poured water into the milk. February 3rd, he took batteries from the smoke detector. February 22nd, he made us practice crying for the social worker." Each word was a knife slicing through Garrett's carefully built case. He shouted, his face red, accusing me of coaching them. But the judge ordered him to sit, his tone sharp as glass. Rosalie wasn't done. From the bottom of her box, she pulled out a small tablet. Daddy didn't know this game had a recorder running. It saved everything he said when he was at our house. She pressed play, and Garrett's voice filled the courtroom, coaching her to claim she was hungry, promising Disney World, threatening to move away if she didn't help him. Gasps echoed across the gallery. Garrett lunged to protest, but the judge ordered silence again. Rosalie pressed another button, this time revealing a recording of Garrett and Sienna in the car. His voice was calm, calculating. "Once I get the kids, we get the inheritance, over $2 million. We'll send them to boarding school in Switzerland, maybe see them on holidays." Sienna's voice chimed in, playful. "You're brilliant. I don't know why your parents insisted on that clause." Garrett laughed. "They thought money should stay with family. They never imagined I'd divorce Bethany. But I've ruined her credit, called her boss to suggest drug testing. She can barely afford that public defender. She doesn't stand a chance." The room went silent except for the scratching of the judge's pen. Colton rushed forward, then clutching his notebook with tear-stained cheeks. "Your Honor, I wrote everything down too. Daddy told me to lie about Mommy being mean. He said if I didn't, he'd take away my dinosaurs. February 10th, he put soap in the washing machine and said it was Mommy's fault. February 15th, he made me say Mommy never helped me, but she always does." Garrett exploded his chair, crashing backward as he accused me again of coaching. The judge's voice thundered through the room. "Control yourself or be held in contempt." Turning to my children, the judge asked softly, "Did your mother tell you to say any of this?" "No, Your Honor," Rosalie said firmly. "Mom doesn't even know we collected this. She always tells us to respect Dad. She never says bad things about him. We came here because we had to." Colton added, "Mrs. Chen helped us take the bus. She said truth needed a chance." The elderly woman in the gallery nodded quietly, her cane resting against the bench. Finally, my overwhelmed lawyer found her strength. Your Honor, we move for immediate dismissal of Mr. Morrison's custody petition and request full custody for my client with only supervised visitation for him. The judge's face hardened as he looked at Garrett. What I've witnessed today is one of the most egregious cases of custodial interference and child manipulation I've ever seen. You used your children as weapons for financial gain. You threatened, bribed, and deceived them. He turned to me then, and his voice softened. Mrs. Morrison, I apologize for the ordeal you've endured. Your children's bravery has revealed the truth. You will be granted full custody immediately. Mr. Morrison will have supervised visitation only pending a full investigation. Additionally, you are awarded legal fees, back child support, and court costs. And Mr. Morrison, your case will be referred to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. The gavel struck final, an echoing sealing the decision. I exhaled for the first time in months, my hands trembling with relief. My children had saved me. 6 weeks passed after that hearing, but its echo lingered in every corner of our lives. Our apartment hadn't changed in size, but it felt lighter, as though someone had finally thrown open the windows after years of stale air. Rosalie hummed now while she built her science projects, instead of working with the tight silence of a child burdened by secrets. Colton's Lego cities sprawled beyond his bedroom into the hallway, complete with a courthouse he proudly labeled, "Where truth always wins." Garrett's downfall came swiftly. Child Protective Services launched an investigation into his behavior, and his assets were frozen pending criminal charges for fraud, custodial interference, and witness tampering. Without the money flowing, Sienna abandoned him, posting online about removing toxic people from your journey. I almost felt pity for him, almost until I remembered the way he had tried to buy my children's loyalty with promises of Disneyland in exchange for lies. What surprised me most was Garrett's family. For years he had told me they wanted nothing to do with me after the divorce. But after the hearing, his sister Claire called me in tears. Bethany, I had no idea. He told us you wouldn't let him see the kids. We believed him. She began visiting every Sunday, bringing Rosalie advanced chemistry kits and Colton books on dinosaurs. His cousin Marcus, a lawyer, offered to help me recover the financial damage Garrett had caused. Family isn't about blood, Marcus told me. It's about loyalty and truth. You and the kids are our family. Then came the final twist. Walter and Vera's estate executor contacted me with news Garrett had never known a secondary clause in their will. If Garrett was deemed unfit through legal proceedings, education trusts for the grandchildren would activate, managed by an independent trustee, until they turned 25. Rosalie's schooling was now secure through graduate school. Colton's future was protected. It was as if Vera had quietly prepared for the possibility her son's worst instincts might one day surface. Still, the wounds lingered. One evening, as I tucked Rosalie into bed, she whispered, "Mom, are you mad at us for keeping secrets?" Her sparkly shoes, the same ones she had worn in court, peeked from under her blanket. "Never, sweet pea," I told her. "You were protecting our family in the only way you knew how. But you shouldn't have had to be that brave." She smiled faintly. "I'm glad I was." Mrs. Brennan said truth needs a voice, even a small one. Colton appeared with his dinosaur blanket, his voice muffled. "Mom, will Dad ever say sorry?" I sighed, pulling him close. "I don't know, buddy. Sometimes people get so lost in their lies, they forget what truth looks like." "That's sad," he murmured, climbing into Rosalie's bed. "But we won't forget, right?" "Never," I promised. In those quiet nights, the weight of what we'd endured sometimes pressed on me. Years of Garrett's manipulation had left scars deeper than I realized. I had convinced myself that being strong meant carrying every burden alone, never asking for help. But Nolan, my brother, flew in from Maine after hearing what happened. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, shaking his head as he helped me refinance the apartment and sort out a budget. "You should have called me," he said for the 100th time. "You didn't have to do this alone." I thought being strong meant handling everything myself, I admitted. "No," he said gently. "That's exactly how Garrett wanted you to think. Isolation is how manipulators win. They make you believe your voice doesn't matter, that no one will believe you. They count on silence." He was right. For years, I had lived in Garrett's version of reality, where every failure was my fault, every struggle my incompetence. But my children had proven something different. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. Sometimes it waits in notebooks written in a child's handwriting, or in the shaky hands of a girl carrying a glitter-covered shoebox into a courtroom. Even Miss Delane, my public defender, changed after that day. She took my case pro bono and later admitted she'd been on the verge of giving up, overwhelmed by Thornley's polished aggression. "Your children saved more than you," she told me. "Their courage will help me recognize custodial interference in other families. Dozens of children may be spared because of Rosalie and Colton." One afternoon, I finally filled the prescription I had skipped for months to pay for Colton's inhaler. Standing at the pharmacy counter, I realized I'd been holding my breath for 7 years through marriage, divorce, and battle. For the first time, I exhaled. The shoebox sat on our mantel, now redecorated by the kids with photos of our little family. Colton had labeled it in his careful block letters, "The box that saved us." But I knew it wasn't the cardboard or the glitter that had saved us. It was the truth carried forward by 2 children who refused to let lies win. The weeks that followed felt like a slow process of learning how to live without fear. Our routines returned to something simple but sacred. I came home from shifts to find Rosalie sketching plans for new experiments, humming the same tune she once hummed with her grandmother. Colton greeted me at the door, eager to show the newest extension of his Lego city, always making sure his courthouse stood tall at the center. News about Garrett spread quickly through town. His colleagues, once dazzled by his charm, avoided him when whispers of fraud and custodial interference reached their offices. Court proceedings for his criminal charges dragged on, and he faced not only the loss of custody, but also the possibility of prison. Sienna disappeared from his life, entirely leaving behind only an Instagram post about choosing self-love. For a man who once cared most about appearances, watching his carefully curated image collapse was its own punishment. But for us, healing was not about his downfall. It was about reclaiming our peace. My children had carried burdens no child should, and I wanted them to feel like kids again. So, I found small ways to restore joy. Pancake breakfasts on Saturdays, even when money was tight. Evening walks, where Colton quizzed me on dinosaur facts, while Rosalie pointed out constellations she had memorized. Bedtime stories where laughter replaced fear. Support came from places I hadn't expected. Garrett's sister Claire became a regular presence in our lives, showing up with chemistry sets and helping Rosalie learn equations I hadn't touched since college. Marcus, his cousin, guided me through repairing my credit and securing the children's future with the inheritance trust. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. Family, I realized, wasn't always about blood. It was about the people who chose to stand beside you when the storm hit. One night, Rosalie asked a question that stayed with me. "Mom, if Grandma Vera suspected Dad might do bad things, why didn't she stop him sooner?" I paused, stroking her hair. Sometimes people hope the ones they love will change. They believe in them even when it hurts. But Vera still protected you in her own way. She made sure the truth would take care of you if Garrett couldn't. Rosalie thought for a moment before whispering. "So maybe love is about protecting even when you're not sure how." "Yes, sweet pea," I said. "And you did exactly that." Colton, always listening, added softly, "We were just brave when you couldn't be Mom." Those words sank deep into me. For years, I had believed strength meant enduring quietly, never breaking, never asking for help. But my children had shown me that strength sometimes looks like speaking up even with a trembling voice. Sometimes it looks like walking into a courtroom with sparkly shoes and a shoebox full of truth. The shoebox remained on our mantel, a symbol of everything we endured. Colton had glued cardboard letters on the side that read, "The box that saved us." When visitors asked about it, Rosalie would smile knowingly and say, "It's proof that lies don't win forever." Miss Delane later told me she had begun using our case in her lectures teaching law students to recognize manipulation in custody battles. "Your children's courage will ripple out to protect others," she said. That knowledge brought me a quiet pride, not just as their mother, but as someone who had learned finally to let the truth speak for itself. Looking back, I understood something I hadn't before. Lies can be polished, rehearsed, and dressed in expensive suits, but they are fragile. Truth, even whispered, even carried in small hands, is stronger. Garrett tried to weaponize his own children, but instead, they became warriors for honesty. They reminded me that silence is what lies depend on most, and that breaking it can change everything. If you are listening to this story and find pieces of your own life in it, know this: you are not alone. There are thousands of parents fighting battles against carefully crafted deception. They are told they are too poor, too busy, too imperfect to deserve their children. But truth has a voice. Sometimes it is yours. Sometimes it comes from allies you least expect. Sometimes it comes from the courage of your children. Do not give up. Document everything. Speak when it feels impossible. Because no matter how convincing a lie may look, it cannot outlast the weight of truth. If this story touched you, please like this video to support more voices like ours. Share it so others know they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories of courage and justice, and comment below with your own experiences or words of encouragement. Together, we can remind each other that truth, no matter how small, always finds its way through the dark.